Francesca Hilton was the only daughter of Conrad Hilton and Gabor. Not only was the alleged story of her conception disturbing, her tragic fate was downright horrifying. The story of the Hilton spans generations and is marked by shocking twists and turns. It begins with Augustus Halverson Hilton, who immigrated to the United States from Norway in 1870, settling in San Antonio, Mexico. There Augustus and his wife Mary Genevieve built a home where they raised their 8 children, including Conrad Hilton, the son who would change everything. Conrad grew up in New Mexico, but not in the United States of America. New Mexico did not become a state until 1912, at which point Conrad was already 25. This presented him with a unique opportunity. He became one of New Mexico's first Republican representatives. Very soon, Conrad became disillusioned with politics, claiming he couldn't stand the bureaucracy, slowness, cheating, lying, and inside deals of politics. Instead, he went into a field known for its integrity and honesty, banking. Conrad headed southwest to where dreams were coming true, Texas. At the time, Texas was experiencing the peak of its oil boom. Surely, with everyone making money from oil, they'd need a bank. Unfortunately, Conrad couldn't secure the purchase of his bank. He needed to change directions, and fast. That opportunity came to him in the form of the Mobley Hotel in Cisco, Texas. The Mobley Hotel contained 40 rooms. 40 rooms that became a constant revolving door of guests. As the Mobley continued to thrive, Conrad saw an opportunity. If he could make this much profit from one hotel, imagine what he could do with a few more. Conrad bought the Mobley Hotel in 1919, and by 1930, he owned 4 more hotels throughout Texas. However, the good times didn't last. After the stock market crash of 1929, the Great Depression plunged America into financial ruin from coast to coast. No one had money to spend on frivolities like hotel stays. Against all odds, Conrad managed to hold on to both his sanity and his business during those devastating years. Not only did he retain control of his remaining 8 hotels, but he also began expanding beyond Texas. The Depression turned out to be only a temporary setback. Conrad continued spreading the Hilton name across America in more ways than one. During the rise, fall, and rebirth of his hotel empire, Conrad embarked on a more personal venture, building a family. He met and married Adelaide Barron in 1925, and together they began laying the foundation of the Hilton legacy. The couple had 3 sons, Conrad Hilton Jr., Baron Hilton, and Eric Hilton. 1 year after the birth of their 3rd son, the couple divorced. Despite the emotional turmoil, Conrad didn't slow down. As the Depression ended, he continued to grow his empire. Conrad spent roughly 8 years nursing his heartbreak before setting his eyes on a new and far more famous bride. In 1942, he married Hungarian socialite and actress Jaza Gabor. When she met Conrad, Gabor had only been in the United States for about a year, having fled the chaos and violence that was spreading across Europe. At first, Conrad may have seemed like a hero to her. He even helped her parents escape from Hungary. Sadly, that image of him didn't last too long. Soon their marriage began to crumble. During their relationship, Conrad appeared to diminish Gabor, perhaps taking more pleasure in possessing her than in loving her. He even insisted on changing her name, calling her Georgia instead of Zaza. Gabor later wrote that this act symbolized everything my marriage to him would eventually become. My Hungarian roots were to be ripped out, and my background ignored. I soon discovered that my marriage to Conrad meant the end of my freedom. My own needs were completely ignored. I belonged to Conrad. From Gabber's own words, it's clear that their marriage was doomed from the start. A few months before their divorce was finalized, she gave birth to their only child, Francesca Gabber Hilton. While Francesca's birth would forever connect them, it was a bond overshadowed by darkness. According to Gabber's biography, she did not consent to the intimate encounter that resulted in Francesca's conception. It was a horrifying allegation, one that forever tainted the memory of their union. Their divorce was finalized in October 1947. Gabber went on to become one of Hollywood's most glamorous and notorious figures. Over the years, she married 9 times and appeared in numerous films and television shows throughout the 1950s and 1960s. Meanwhile, Conrad had to deal with his older children who were causing some big issues for him. Conrad's eldest son, Conrad Nicholson Hilton Jr., known as Nicky, proved to be trouble almost from the moment he entered the world. He dropped out of or was kicked out of most of the schools he attended. He had little to no interest in the family business. In fact, his true passions seemed to be outrageous parties and beautiful women. According to Gabber, Nicky and Conrad had shockingly more in common than one might think. During Gabber's marriage to Conrad, Nicky was between the ages of 16 and 21. Whether it was during her marriage or after, Gabber claimed to have gotten to know her stepson Nicky much too well. Whether or not that claim was true, Nicky certainly shared his father's taste for beautiful and famous women. Nicky married superstar Elizabeth Taylor in October 1949. MGM, Taylor's movie studio at the time, paid for their public ceremony, turning the young star's marriage into a Hollywood spectacle. Taylor was only 18 years old, 4 years older than Taylor. Nicky was 23 when they married and already deeply dependent on several substances. He also appeared to have a gambling problem. What looked like a fairy tale from the outside quickly descended into a nightmare when Nicky began to show his true colors. His playboy lifestyle and dangerous habits turned him into a temperamental and aggressive husband who would lash out at Taylor at any sign of provocation. The consequences were chilling. Not long after their marriage, Taylor became pregnant. Tragically, during one of his violent rages, Nicky assaulted Taylor, causing a miscarriage. Unsurprisingly, their marriage lasted less than a year. The couple divorced on the grounds of mental cruelty. Shockingly, Nicky was still considered an eligible bachelor in Hollywood. He did not let his divorce from Elizabeth Taylor slow him down. Before 1951 was over, Nicky announced his engagement to another actress, Betsy Von Fenberg. According to some, Von Fenberg shared Nicky's love for wild parties. Perhaps he had met his match. Von Fenberg recalled that Nicky slept till God knows what time. He got up and started drinking and playing cards. He didn't go to work. Sadly, Nicky Hilton appeared to have learned nothing from his first marriage. At first, Von Fenberg claimed not to be too bothered by Nicky's violent temper. However, it soon became too much for her. The engagement ended before a marriage ever took place. While Nicky stumbled through his life, his father and brothers continued to grow the family's legacy. Conrad spent the 1940s and 1950s expanding the Hilton name, building and acquiring hotels across America, including the historic Waldorf Astoria. When Conrad secured the management rights to the Waldorf Astoria, he also absorbed the legacy of another famous American family, the Ayers. Unlike the Ayers, however, Conrad had no intention of allowing his family's name to implode through his descendants.
Not if he could help
Carelessness. Owning a chain of hotels in America alone did not satisfy him.
Not when.
There was an entire world waiting beyond its borders. Conrad founded the Hilton Hotels Corporation in 1946 and the Hilton International Company in 1949, making his enterprise the first international hotel chain. However, this grand legacy presented a problem.
What
would happen to it all once he was gone? Conrad eventually brought Nicky into the Hilton legacy, appointing him vice president of the Hilton Corporation in 1951 and manager of the Bel Air Hotel. However, he had major concerns about what might become of his family name if his party-loving son took control. Despite his new responsibilities, Nicky could not keep his life together.
He ran
into trouble with the authorities in 1954. He married again in 1958 and had 2 sons, but that marriage also fell apart. Nicky could not hold on to anything, so how could he possibly be trusted to inherit a multi-million-dollar corporation? Sadly, Nicky's Harding lifestyle settled the matter for Conrad in a truly tragic
way.
As a direct consequence of his reckless habits, Nicky died 10 years before his father, succumbing to a heart attack at the age of 42. This left Conrad's remaining 2 sons and daughter to be considered in his
will.
With the vast amount of money the Hiltons had by that point, one might assume the inheritance would be handled in a civil way. Unfortunately, that was not the case. What Conrad's first son lacked, his second son made up for completely. Baron Hilton proved to be everything his father could have hoped for in a son. He became involved in the hotel business at an early age and displayed his father's sharp business sense. Surely, after all Baron had done for the company, Conrad would want to leave his legacy in his second son's hands. Reality, however, turned out to be slightly more complicated. Conrad Hilton died in 1979 at the age of 91. He left behind a multi-million-dollar business and 3 surviving children, his 2 sons and his daughter. But shockingly, his children received very little. Instead, Conrad left 97% of his estate to the charitable organization he had founded over 30 years earlier, the Conrad and Hilton Foundation. At first glance, it appeared that Conrad had neglected his children. However, that wasn't exactly the case. Conrad left 13.5 million shares to the Conrad and Hilton Foundation, but his will also kept Baron in mind. He gave his son the right to purchase those shares, which would allow him to keep control of the company within the family. Unfortunately, Conrad failed to anticipate that the foundation would not want to give up those shares once they had them. Although Conrad's will reportedly granted Baron the right to buy back the Hilton Hotel stock, the foundation refused to sell. When the clause was revealed, the foundation challenged it, sending the entire matter to probate and locking the funds in legal limbo for years. The appeals court finally ruled in Baron's favor in March 1988. During that time, Baron continued to steer the company successfully, which meant that by the time he received the shares, they had quadrupled in value. Not everyone in the family, however, was satisfied with their inheritance. Conrad did not treat his children equally in his will. He did not completely forget Francesca, but despite the vast fortune the Hilton family had amassed by then, her father left her only $100,000. Francesca was furious, and she wasn't about to take this lying down. It is possible that Conrad believed he did not need to provide for his daughter. Through her mother, Francesca was the only child of all 3 wealthy Gabber sisters, and Conrad may have assumed that she would one day inherit the Gabber family's wealth, leaving her no need for the Hilton fortune. Regardless of his reasoning, Francesca felt her father owed her far more than what she received. She contested the will, but the courts ruled against her, forcing her to accept the original amount. This moment marked the beginning of her misfortune. While her half-brothers continued to prosper, Francesca's life began to spiral. Conrad was Gaber's second husband. Throughout her life, Francesca had 7 stepfathers. However, none of them appeared to give her as much grief as her final stepfather, Frederick Prince von Anhalt. Gaber and von Anhalt remained married for the remainder of Gaber's life, which proved to be a huge challenge for Francesca. Francesca's mother became paralyzed after a severe car crash at the end of 2002. From this point on, Gaber's health continued to decline, and von Anhalt gained more and more control over her life. This created an even bigger problem for Francesca. In 2005, von Anhalt accused her of attempting to manipulate her mother for personal gain. According to von Anhalt, Francesca tried to use her mother's house to obtain a loan and also interfered with Gaber's will. He filed lawsuits against her for these alleged actions. However, when Gaber failed to appear, the court dropped the suits. A few years later, the situation changed, and Francesca attempted to take control away from von Anhalt. By 2012, Gaber's health had deteriorated so much that she could no longer care for herself. Francesca sued to establish an independent conservatorship for her mother, likely hoping to gain some control over Gaber's estate. Unfortunately, the judge granted that power to von Anhalt, leaving Francesca out in the cold both financially and emotionally. By the end of her life, Francesca could have desperately used even a fraction of either of her parents' fortunes. Despite being the daughter of 2 wealthy families, she died in poverty. Reports suggest that she was homeless just a month before she died from complications of a stroke, living between short-term rentals and her car. Her mother never learned of her daughter's death, as von Anhalt chose not to tell her. Conrad passed on his relationship troubles to 2 of his children, but both of his younger sons managed to build stable lives and families. Baron, in particular, focused on carrying on the Hilton name. He married Marilyn June Holly in 1947, and they remained married for their entire lives, raising 8 children. Most of their children lived quiet lives, most but not all. His son, Richard Howard Hilton, followed in his father's footsteps by entering the business world. He founded Hilton Really Investment, which helped further expand the Hilton empire. Richard's legacy would change the way the entire world viewed the Hilton name. In 1979, the same year Conrad Hilton died, Richard expanded the family by marrying Kathy Avenino, an American socialite and actress. Richard was 24 and Kathy was 20. Despite their youth, their marriage became one of the strongest in the family. They are still together today and have 4 children, including 2 names everyone recognizes. Nikki Hilton. Although their younger daughter Nikki Hilton was named after Barron's troublesome brother, she managed to avoid most of her great-uncle's vices. She launched her own fashion line in 2004, and after a brief failed Vegas marriage, she has mostly settled down. While Nikki is certainly a recognizable name, she still lives in the shadow of her more famous sister, Paris. Before Paris Hilton, the name Hilton was synonymous with hotels. A few people might have been aware of the scandals of earlier generations, but most thought little about the family beyond their business success. Then, Paris Hilton appeared on the scene with The Simple Life, a reality show she starred in with her friend Nicole Richie. During her meteoric rise to fame, In the early 2000s, Paris Hilton proved that there is no such thing as bad publicity, at least not for the Hiltons. Thanks for watching History Expose.
If
You love uncovering the best stories in history, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring with us. Don't forget to visit our main page, FactMate, for more incredible facts about everything.